I've never posted here before, but 2 years ago something bizarre happened to my best friend and we've been puzzled by this ever since, looking for any kind of an explanation, or perhaps a similar experience by somebody else that could offer an explanation. As we talk often about this experience, we always come up blank, no matter how many talks we have, or how deep we go with the details. My best friend and I went to the mountain to hike and run with two of our other close friends. It was winter and the weather was very bad with lots of ice and lots of snow. The trailhead parking lot had been closed due to the road work, so we had to park a couple of miles away down a long empty road. There was no one in the park but us that day. We regularly have outdoor adventures with all of us as a group, but my best friend and I usually separated from the other two as we were a bit more fit and could move faster. We usually finished early and waited in the car for the other two. This particular day we finished very early, quite early, as a matter of fact, and my friend and I were jogging back to the car. On the jog back, we spotted an old cemetery just off the road. I abruptly veered off, laughing, and pulled my friend with me to go see it and explore for a minute before going back to the car, which was in sight just down the road. After this, we continued jogging to the car. Once we got to the car, we began waiting for our two friends to finish their hike. About 30 minutes passed and we still do not see them. Our car was parked in the opposite direction they would be coming from, so we turned around to look for them constantly to make sure that we did not miss any of them. It was in that moment that my best friend and I saw two people in the distance running straight towards us, and I said, "Oh, there they are," and my friend commented, "They're moving quick." However, as they got closer, we realized that it was not our two female friends like we thought, but it was a male and a female dressed exactly like my best friend, a male, and I, a female. And the female had long blonde hair like me, and the pair were wearing hats like we both were. "Wait a minute, that's not them," I said. We got really confused, but then we got really quiet and started to freak out a little bit too much because we noticed that the running pair abruptly stopped and made a turn toward the cemetery, with the girl pulling on the guy and both of them laughing, just like we did not too long ago. Then the people we were seeing basically just instantly were gone. They just seemed to vanish into nothing. My best friend and I were immediately shocked and looked at each other and both said, "That was us." We both just somehow knew it, and we were both freaked out by it. We were really just shaken up. A few moments later, we saw our friends hiking to the car from the same direction. We asked them if they had seen anybody hiking or running in front of them, and they said they had seen no one. We have never stopped talking about this and have spent the last couple of years trying to figure out some kind of a logical explanation, but nothing makes sense other than this glitch in the matrix theory. Any thoughts or ideas would be greatly appreciated. I know this is a very generic glitch and all, but I would really like to write it down, so here goes. I'm a female 19 working in a nursing home where we deal with clients that are in their last stages of life. Therefore, it wasn't weird that it was announced that this particular client, I'll call her Jane Doe, was now terminal. Terminal for us means morphine, bed rest, and guiding them gently through their last days and weeks. Now, the nursing home that I worked at has 4 different sections, and I work a bit of every single section that there is, and it's been about 2 months since I had to work in the section where Jane Doe was at. When I worked there for 2 months prior, I remember everybody was talking about her. Family was allowed to come despite the rules on this lockdown, so they could say their goodbyes, and Jane Doe herself refused to eat or drink anything really. Now yesterday I worked at this section again, and lo and behold, when I arrived, Jane Doe was sitting in her wheelchair in the living room, chatting, eating, and drinking. Now, I was happy, of course. She's a sweet woman who can have a good conversation with anybody, including myself, and I went to go talk to her. She seemed in good health, or as healthy as you could be when you're 98 years old and are suffering from dementia. Later that day, I said to two of my colleagues that I was super happy that she had recovered so well and that I hadn't expected to see her at all. When I mentioned this, they were really confused. Neither of them could recall this woman being so ill that she was terminal. I held my ground, looked up at the last date I worked in that section, and we checked that date in our record system, and there was nothing. 5 coworkers and a second checked in the system later, and I'm still the only one who remembers her being ill. But I'm still 100% certain that it was her and that she was most certainly terminal. I wrote in her log room that she had refused to eat. I was taught how to place a morphine butterfly on her leg, and I was the one who let her family in late at night, and they specifically said that they were coming for Jane Doe. And I can't have her confused with anybody else because she was very particular and had very distinct things that I remember about her. I hope I'm remembering it wrong and that she was never ill. I really wish for her to be healthy, but I certainly do not remember it that way. There was this bakery in the center of town that many of my colleagues and I have bought pastries at before. It had been there for years. One day at work last year, everybody at work was commenting on how the bakery had gone out of business and how disappointed everybody was that this bakery that everybody loved had closed down. Driving by the storefront, the bakery was closed, dark inside, and business space for rent signs in the windows, and the bakery sign was taken down. After about 6 months, I happened to be driving by and saw that the sign was back up and the bakery in question was back in business. The next day at work, I commented to some of my colleagues about the good news that the bakery we all loved and enjoyed had returned and was back up. Everyone looked at me strangely, and one of my colleagues asked what I meant by back up, and I said, back in business, you know. I reminded them how it had closed down and had gone out of business. They informed me that the bakery had never been out of business and had never been closed, never been empty. The sign had never been taken down either, according to them. I am positive that I saw it dark and empty with a for rent sign in the window and the business sign gone for a period of months. I had heard all those people talking about how it had closed and how disappointed everybody was. That bakery was closed and out of business and gone, and for some strange and weird reason, I happen to be the only person who remembers it. Earlier today, I walked up my stairs and noticed my cat lying at the top sleeping. I walked past and entered my bedroom, in which I sat on my bed putting photos into an album. Remembering the photos were in my drawer, I got up and grabbed them, which literally took only about 5 seconds. I looked down and my cat was fast asleep on my bed. It could not have been more than 30 seconds for the whole thing to take place. The door faces my bed, and I would have 1,000% have seen the cat walk in had that happened, but the cat never walked in. It spooked me, and I have no explanation for what I witnessed whatsoever. So, I was in Galveston, Texas for work this week, and my boss drove by this building to show me a face on the side He told me that the city has tried to power wash the face off multiple times, but then it just keeps reappearing on different panels of the building. It was really strange because I could see the panel that was power washed much lighter than the rest of the building, and the face right below it. I was wondering if anybody has had any theories or has ever heard about this moving face in Galveston. The only thing that would come to mind was this forum, so I decided to post here about it. I recently found this sub and thought that I might tell my story, so here it is. My birthday was a few months ago, and I recently set up a small business, so my best friend Anna gifted me a pen with my business name and logo printed on it. It's pretty cute, and I really like the thought of using a personalized pen when I was organizing appointments and doing things that I needed. I tested the pen on the back of my hand, and unfortunately it was blue ink. Now, for the record, I hate blue ink. It hurts my eyes when I write more than a couple of lines, and just prefer the look of black ink in general. I showed Anna the ink on the back of my hand. She also prefers black ink and was disappointed that it was blue because she wasn't able to specify which color ink when ordering and had been hoping black would be the default. Anyways, I had the pen for a good while and never used it until this week. I met Anna and we were in her car when a client called to make an appointment. The blue pen was the only pen that I had on me, so I reluctantly used it to write down the details of the clients and the appointments, basically all the stuff you need to write down when somebody calls and asks you about something regarding your business. When I had finished with my call, I silently showed Anna what I had written. The ink was now black. Neither of us can explain or understand this, as she and I both remember the ink being blue. However, now the ink out of this pen that she got me is black. This happened to me about a year, maybe a year and a half ago, and to this day I still can't quite say what happened. I was in my room. I was browsing the internet while I had a head of garlic roasting in the toaster oven in the kitchen. And then I heard my dad come inside, so I figured I could kill two birds with one stone and say hi to my dad while I went to go check on my garlic. I walked out of my room and caught my dad halfway down the hall, and I said, "Hi," or something along those lines. And then I said, "I gotta go check on my garlic." And my dad simply replied with a quick hi and walked straight into his room. I didn't think much of it and just figured he had a long day at work. It should be noted that our hallway is narrow and my dad is much bigger than me, so as I passed my dad in the hallway, I had to press myself against the wall to squeeze by him. While I was in the kitchen, I heard the front door open. My dad's car started and he left, which I thought was super odd since he hadn't been home for only a few minutes at that point. Again, I just brushed it off and went back to my room. About 5 minutes later, it could have been a little bit sooner than that, to be honest, the front door opened again and it was my dad. Except this time he was loud and energetic as usual. He came in and immediately hollered out, "Is somebody cooking? I smell something good." I came out of my room and said, "Yeah, it's the garlic, remember?" That's when he asked me what I meant when I said, "remember," because he doesn't remember, and I explained to him that he had just been home and I told him about the garlic when I passed him in the hallway. That I just saw him a few minutes ago and that he had just walked straight into his room. His demeanor immediately changed and said, "What do you mean? I just got off the highway and pulled into the driveway right now. Are you telling me that somebody went into my room?" And then I told him, I said, "I saw that he went into his room." And it was at this point that he was dead serious, and then he went to his room to check for any missing items. He was under the belief that a home invader had come in and rummaged around in his room. Once he was calm, I explained to him exactly what had happened, and even explained that the person that I saw was even wearing the exact same outfit that my dad was wearing when he walked into the house. My dad was about as spooked as I was after I finished explaining everything. To this day, I still have no idea what happened there. At one point, we thought that maybe my dad had an absence spell or something, since he'd had time before when he was driving where he'd forgotten chunks of time for some reason. Although we couldn't explain then why he came in and then immediately left again, or how it was that my dad clearly remembered just coming off the highway before getting to the house, or where he could have gone in those few brief minutes between when he first left and when he arrived again. And to this day, the one part that still creeps me out is just how close I had been to my father when I slipped past him in the hallway. If anybody has any ideas of what might have happened that night, I'm all ears. I was walking to the store one morning and accidentally looked in the direction of a cafe to the right and thought that I saw somebody that looked familiar to my grandpa, who had passed away back in the year 2008. But then he raised his head and looked straight at me, and I swear to God it was him. It was my grandpa. He had the same work outfit he always wore when working in the yard, and had a mole on his cheek exactly as I remember it. I thought that it was just somebody very similar to him, but then he smiled at me and nodded as if telling me, "Yes, it's me. I never left you." I know it sounds strange, but I had this feeling throughout my body that it really was him. While he was alive, we were extremely close and spent a lot of time together, so this shook me to my core. Another important thing that I think is worth mentioning, if anybody's wondering why I did not stop and go up to him, at that moment when this was happening, I was just so shocked and confused, so I just kept on walking in my direction. Now it's killing me that I didn't go up to him, but in that moment, I really couldn't think straight. It's very hard for me to describe, but I just kept on walking, just out of the pure shock of seeing my grandfather alive for the first time in many years. A few years back, 2012-ish, I was making my way to school using the public bus system. My school was a charter school across town, so they had no bus system for their school. I was waiting at the stop with my headphones on, blasting a podcast. I could not hear anything else. The bus pulled up and I walked up to the doors. For some reason which I cannot explain, I decided to look to my left. And it was then that I saw a car hop the curve and come barreling towards me. I stepped back and the car missed me by maybe a foot. It went back into the road, spun across the median and through oncoming traffic, and miraculously it hit nobody. After that, everybody got on the bus like that insane instance hadn't occurred. I felt sort of calm, like I didn't almost just get flattened by an oncoming car that almost ran me over. I remember the rest of my day felt like I was on autopilot for some reason. My whole life, I've had experiences of being gaslit. My family members, when I recall certain memories, they all tell me that I'm remembering everything wrong. One last quick story. I've had experiences as a child, about 4 years old, where our house was broken into. The experience felt so real, like somebody broke into our house. My mother and sister denied that it ever happened, but when I think back to it, to this day I can recall all the details almost perfectly. Even the faces of the two men who broke in, which is odd for Something that's just a dream or, according to my family, never happened. This world's really crazy, if you know what I mean. The other night, my boyfriend Liam spent the night. I woke up at around 3 a.m. to my son crying. It was unusual only because he's always been the kind of kid that sleeps through the night. But I didn't think much of it. I left Liam in my bed and went to get my son back to sleep. And I said, I'll be right back. I didn't mean to, but I fell asleep with my son. So to understand this glitch, let me provide what normally happens. Liam stays over every single night, then leaves around 6 a.m. to go to his house to get ready for work. We work together, so this works out great for both of us. This is every day, so this is what I was expecting. When I fell asleep in my son's room, I didn't bring my phone, so I had no alarm. The next thing I know, I wake up because Liam was standing in the doorway of my son's room in his very recognizable work clothes. I knew I was late because the sun was coming up. I rolled out of my son's bed and said, "Crap, I'm late." I said a few things about, wow, I can't believe I spent this long, as I walked to him, all without him saying a word, and I gave him a hug. I never opened the bedroom door, and I know that I saw him as soon as I opened my eyes. I knew that he was in his work clothes, which he never brings to my house, and I knew that this was him, and I saw this while I was still on the bed. I hugged him in the doorway as I got up and I went to him, and I was sure of it. I was so confused as to why he was dressed like that, and he told me that he left my house at around 4 a.m. because he couldn't sleep. He didn't want to wake me, so he just went home on his own. I had no idea of this when I first woke up. Later that day around lunchtime, I was explaining to him how rushed and annoyed I was that I was late. In that conversation, Liam stopped me and said, "No, you came out of the room and I was on the other side of the house. You walked to me all the way to the living room without talking." But I was talking. From my recollection, he was the one that was not speaking. I said, "That's just not possible because I know I saw you in the doorway after opening the door. I saw him in his work clothes while I was still in the bed. I know that I did, and I woke up because you were looking at me." He said that he was on his way to do that, on his way to open the door, but before he could get through the living room and past the kitchen, he saw me walking through my son's open door to him without saying a word, and I walked all the way to him in the living room. I asked my son if the door was closed when he got back, and he said yes. I know for sure I never opened that door. Neither did he in his reality, apparently. I told him that I have a hard time believing his memory of this because I know what I saw, and he said the same thing to me. He knows how the events played out from his own perspective. We both came to accept that both of our realities are true. This has happened before where he has seen me pull up to the house after him. He's sure of it, but I've been waiting inside for him the entire time. Or the same thing happens to me where I see him somewhere and he claims he's not there. It dawned on me that maybe we are living in some kind of a multiple reality kind of existence. My threads or my realities and his sometimes leak over to each other and they merge. I guess that's what it is, and I look at him while trying to figure out how we both saw something but experienced two totally different things. It's kind of weird how this is working and how our realities are kind of merging together. But we know that there's a difference in what we're experiencing. Even though our experiences are very, very similar, they're not so similar that we cannot tell the difference. A couple of months ago, I was driving to a doctor's appointment for my annual physical. I've driven to this same office multiple times. I've had the same doctor for years. It's about 10 minutes from my house, and the route is just as simple, and it's a rural, suburban type, 2-lane road the whole way there. It's on the corner of the 2-lane road and a busy 6-lane street. I left 20 minutes before the appointment so I could check in. Since I've gone this route so many times, I'm kind of on autopilot, and it took me a while to realize that it was taking longer than expected for me to get there, but I'm not sure why. I'm thinking that it should be 3 more stoplights and I should be there in a few minutes. I keep an eye for the school that indicates the office is up ahead. But then as I'm driving, I count 4 stoplights, then 5, then 6, then 7. I'm disorientated, and all the houses look the same to me for some reason. I think maybe I passed the office, but that doesn't make any sense because it's on a 6-lane busy road. I would have noticed it right away, so I just keep driving. I'm almost in tears because I realize that I'm going to be late, and I don't know why. The route is literally the same road the whole way there. I haven't made any turns. How could I be lost? It's so easy to get there, and I'm so confused. The area looks familiar, but I feel like I'm driving past the same houses and the same stoplights over and over again. I haven't seen the school on my right that indicates that the office is coming up. Finally, I pull over into a church parking lot and pull up a map on my phone. I feel ridiculous needing to use a map to get there, but the map indicates that I'm on the right street. It says that I haven't passed the office and that the office is just up the road. This doesn't make any sense because I haven't seen the school or the huge 6-lane road yet, and I've been driving over 20 minutes and there was no traffic and the roads are empty. I literally haven't seen a single car for miles. I pull out of the church parking lot and the school is literally right next to the church, and the busy 6-lane road is right there beyond the point of the school. It was not there when I pulled into the church parking lot. I know I would have seen it, and as soon as I pull out, poof, it just kind of appears out of nowhere. I had just come home from a long day at work, and I was hungry and tired. I had put some leftovers in the oven and booted up my computer to play some video games while I waited for them to heat up. Right as it was booting up, I blinked, and I was on my couch, and I had just woken up. My clock said that it was 11 p.m., and the leftovers were gone, and the dishes were away, and I was full and no longer hungry. My computer was off, and when I touched it, the monitor was very cold, meaning that it hadn't been on for a while. Last time I had looked at the clock, it was 7 p.m. 4 hours of my life were gone, and I don't know what happened. I don't think I was abducted by aliens, but I don't know what this could have been. It spooks me to this day. I used to work the 3rd shift at a grocery store, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. We would unload the trucks and stock the shelves, and only 3 or 4 of us would be in the entire store working for that entire shift. I say that because it's important to know that no one could have been in the area to have had an effect on what I'm about to explain. One night, though, I was stocking a bunch of cans. I had finished one side and was getting ready to do the other side when I saw a can about to fall off the shelf, expecting it to hit the ground. What I saw amazed me because it didn't. It levitated over the floor about 2 feet off the ground for maybe 2 seconds, And then somehow or in some way it just glitched back into place. Back in the first week of March of this year, right as the lockdown was descending upon the US, I heard a very strange noise in my head at night. I had gone to the mall that day and had strong feelings of dread the entire time. It would be the last normal outing for a long time, as I had my headphones on and was listening to music that night, and then I heard a very loud ripping travel from one ear to the other, almost like time was being unzipped in my head or something. It wasn't like anything painful or medically worrisome, but it did feel like the start of traveling down some alternate path for some reason. The weird thing is, both my sisters, who live in other places, also heard weird noises that same week. My one sister and her husband heard a loud crash in their house, a weird noise that they had never heard before, but when they went to go look to see what happened, nothing happened. There was nothing there, or there was no reason to hear anything like that. I'm curious to see if anybody else has had any kind of similar experiences around this time in 2020. So, everybody has their preference of music, and there are bands which we listen to daily, over and over sometimes. Something rather odd happened, but I was wondering if this has happened to anybody else before as well. I've not told anybody about this experience except for my best friend because she was involved in this too. So I discovered a band called Pale Waves after I went to see this show in 1975 in Houston, and they opened the show. Like I said, everybody has their preference, but me and my best friend believe that we're the only people who listen to this band around here. A lot of people probably have never heard of them, but I'd say that they have somewhat of a decent fan base. Anyways, long story short, I went on to Spotify to listen to one of their songs that I had stuck in my head, only I couldn't find them on my playlist. I added almost all their songs to my phone on my playlist, so I'm not too weirded out by this yet, and I go to look on their page on Spotify, and lo and behold, that page did not exist. Odd, but I thought maybe they moved it themselves from Spotify or something. I got on Google to search for them, and there wasn't a trace of them anywhere. No Facebook page, no Spotify, not even Apple Music. So I typed in the lead singer's name on stuff and searched, and it seems she did not exist either. It was like they went missing from every platform that there was. I asked to look them up on my sister's phone, and I got the same results. Same on my laptop as well. It freaked me out, and so then I decided to text my best friend about it, and I brought up the band Pale Wave in the text, and I mentioned in the text that it was like they did not exist, and I asked my friend to look it up, and my friend texted back saying, "Who?" And I said, "The band, the opening act. Remember in 1975, we saw them open up at that concert." The whole thing was just odd. I never mentioned to anybody except my best friend about this incident. The day after it happened, I looked them up again, and boom, they were back. All their music, all the videos, the pages, the Google searches, everything was back as though they existed again. Now maybe they did possibly remove all their stuff off of the internet for one day. It seems kind of impossible, but even so, it's really odd that I couldn't find anything for them during that entire day. The creepiest part about all this stuff is my shirt. I bought a Pale Wave shirt at that show, black with long sleeves and red writing on it. I wore it 2 days before this happened. only to see it gone from my dresser. And of course, my mom didn't know what shirt I was looking for, and it came back to my dresser the very next day. I wonder if anybody has ever had anything happen like this to them before. Not necessarily with a band, but just anything else that existed one day and all of a sudden didn't exist the next day. I experience weird coincidences and unexplained things all the time. Normally, they're small and non-recurring, but last week it was different. It was a cooler day, and I was heading into town to meet my husband for lunch at a local bakery downtown. We decided to sit outside at one of those little tables along the sidewalk. I was seated facing down the street towards the bank, and there was a small open parking lot in between the bakery and this bank. As we were eating, I noticed an older man with two adorable little girls. I commented to my husband about how cute one of the girls' outfits was. She had a flowy tutu that was colored almost like a mermaid, so I wanted to note it and just mention it because it was not very common. She definitely stood out with that outfit. We kept chatting a while, and the man and the two girls walked from the parking lot and into the bank. The youngest girl had ran ahead just a bit, crossing the drive-through roadway by herself. I remember being worried about her getting hit by a car, but she ended up just being fine. Fast forward a couple of minutes, and we were still eating, and I noticed the same family of three. Same outfits, same everything. Again, going from the parking lot towards the bank. And again, the little girl ran ahead, crossing the drive-thru alone. I simply thought that maybe I had noticed them walk back to their car and then come back. Perhaps the dad had forgotten something. A little confused, I tried to just forget about it. Then, it happened again. The third time in a row I saw this. This was easy to notice as well because there was not very many people out around that time of the day. My husband actually said something about it before I could. How many times are they going to go into that bank? Now, I knew I wasn't crazy since he had clearly seen it too. At that time, he received a business call and had to walk to his car. I just sat there, staring at the bank, waiting for the family to come outside the door, normally so that I could just let this go. The thing about this is there was no other entrance or exit other than the one they were using, except possibly an emergency exit located on the other side of the building, the opposite side of the building they were parked on. And even so, they still would have to come down the same walkway that I was sitting at and walk back to the parking lot. I'm almost sure that I should have seen them, however, neither me nor my husband had. It was like they were just magically spawning back into the parking lot every few minutes. Anyways, as I sat there staring at the entrance, to my left I noticed the little girl again running ahead toward the bank. The dad and the sister followed after. It was making me horribly uncomfortable. I looked around hoping anybody else was witnessing what I was. Was this a glitch? Or were these people even real? I feel like we're all crazy or something. I feel like I should have got up out of my seat and walked down the sidewalk just to see it happen again with my own two eyes a lot closer, and perhaps even confronted the older man just to see what he would say. But I didn't necessarily want to make a scene out of something that could have been just a very, very strange coincidence, or perhaps there was some kind of a explanation for all of this that I just wasn't understanding. However, it just got me thinking about how weird our reality is, and after reading some of the stories on this forum, I can't help but think that I'm not the only one having these kinds of events happen in their life.